keep the coins for him and guarantee to buy them back. You see, with F&B, anyone can invest in shares, even Anthony. Share investor from F&B. To start investing in shares, visit fnb.co.za.
FNBs, how can we help you? First National Bank, a division of First Bank Bank Limited, and authorized financial services and credit provider. T's and C's apply.
AM Live on SAfm 104.17.
Well, good morning if you've just joined us. This is AM Live on SAfm, South Africa's news and information media. And right now it's time for another decisive debate. SAfm, in collaboration with WWF South Africa, brings you decisive debates. And this morning's one is on the motion, fracking threatens our water resources. Now, as we know, when we talk about fracking, obviously a very emotive issue, and there are two very diverse schools of thoughts on fracking, and the one side always says that it's the future of energy, while the other says that it is inherently toxic. And like so many aspects of life, I would like to believe that the truth perhaps lies somewhere in between. And this morning, it is, of course, another intelligent debate, but it is more than that. It is a contest. There will be a winner and a loser, and we're coming to you live from Gibbs this morning. But be clear on one thing, this is not a panel discussion. Please, we do expect you to vote. You can SMS P4701. The keyword is frack. And if you agree with the motion, you can SMS yes, or you can SMS frack no if you disagree. And then our Twitter account is also live for that this morning. It's SAfm, AM Live on SAfm, and the hashtag is a decisive debate. Now, this morning we'll have two panels squaring off, and we'll start off by allowing opening statements on both sides, and we will time these 2 minutes, and we will cut you off. And obviously, we want to hear your views. So you can AMI on SAfm.
Scientific shortcomings they argue for physical exploration as a means to evaluate the worth of fracking in South Africa. But it's an understanding that thousands of gas wells, probably more than 10,000, will be required to extract a meaningful quantity of gas proves that shale gas mining in South Africa is no small affair. And so the threat to our resources, to our water resources, belies the claim of small and easily manageable. establishing a convincing case for the motion. Fracking threatens our water resources.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I would like now to invite the first speaker against the motion, fracking threatens our water resources, Ivo Fechter, to put his case to you. And Ivo writes on economic, political, technological, and environmental subjects, and is the author of Extreme Environment, a book on how environmental exaggeration harms emerging economies.
Good morning. Shareholders does have implications. I believe that most is a threat. There are indeed three core issues. Where will they get the water? Does it pollute anything down the hole? And what happens with the wastewater? So, first, modern shale gas drilling uses less water than conventional gas. A Harvard study found it uses less water than any other fossil fuel nowadays. Biofuel, which environmentalists so love, uses nearly 1,000 times more water. Some new fracturing methods don't use any water at all. But if we assume the worst, the scary number of 20 million litres per well, context matters. South Africa's golf courses use enough water every year to frack 15,000 wells. If you drew that from the Karoo Dam, you need 3% of the solar capacity once off. In Texas, which is water stressed like the Karoo, shale gas accounts for only 1.7% of total freshwater use. Shell promised not to compete with Karoo residents for water. In fact, they say that they will leave the Karoo with more water than they found it. This is actually plausible, but breaking even seems acceptable to me. The second charge is that shale gas drilling will pollute freshwater aquifers. The fracking happens several kilometers deeper than shallow groundwater. There is no evidence that the pollution is a widespread risk, and no anecdotal claims have survived regulatory investigations. Ordinary surface spills occasionally happen, but they do in any industry, even those are rare. Consider this: a leaking well is useless. Even if the industry did not care about the environment, it does care whether a well that costs as much as a Canada upgrade can actually produce gas. The third version is what happens to wastewater. This is not a new or unique problem. Most wastewater simply gets recycled and the rest can easily be treated. The latest technology is called zero discharge water management systems. It produces no waste at all. To the best of our knowledge, the risks to our water resources are indeed small and manageable. Any remaining questions can only be answered by exploration. Blindly taking risks is dangerous, but we are not blind. An excessive risk aversion can cause just as much harm.
Thank you, Ivo. And now speaking for the motion, fracking threatens our water resources, is Jessica Naidu, CEO of the Water Research Commission, which is South Africa's only dedicated water research, steering and funding institution.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. I think it goes straight from Ivo's point. One of the biggest lessons of the United States is when the boom gets ahead of the know-how of the science, there is a very high price to pay. And some of the comments that you just heard is reflecting some of that lack of science. Yes, indeed, when compared to other mining activities, the amount of water needed for fracking is much lower, but it really depends on where you do it. So if you did this in a high rainfall region that was water rich, this debate would be completely different. We happen to be wanting to do it in one of the driest areas of the country and one of the most environmentally sensitive areas of the country. The second issue is that we don't really know about what's happening in the groundwater in Peru. There are some surface aquifers, there are also some very deep aquifers. So the opportunity to pollute the existing groundwater resources is indeed a very real one. The issue about zero waste is not realizable in the short term. The reality is that the way you treat this water is a fundamental part about how we need to take this debate forward. Because apart from the usual pollution risks and how to deal with the egress of water, we also have to deal with the health issues associated with this, which we will expand later in the discussion. But the last point I want to make, as part of the introductory remarks, is the entire equation around the risk nature of this exercise actually depends very fundamentally on what you intend to do with shale gas. Because there's a huge difference if we want to use it here locally in South Africa or if we want to export it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And to argue that fracking does not threaten our water resources, we now have Onki Apane, who is Department of Energy Deputy Director General for Policy Planning and Clean Energy.
Thank you, Edison. Thank you. Basically, good morning. Maybe just to start off, I'd like to just clarify a few things related to definitions, and then I'll go into the start of my argument. And it goes something along these lines that we have to make sure that we refer to the same thing so that we can conduct the right debate. Let's not define fracking to mean the entire process of developing an oil or gas well, because that's not what fracking is. Let's rather use a definition that is very familiar, which relates to hydraulic fracking being the simulation of a well process used to maximize extraction of underground resources, including oil, natural gas, even water. It is not the entire process of drilling, casing a well, and producing oil and natural gas. It is one step. Now, against that background, the US Department of Energy and Groundwater Protection Council has determined, and I quote, based on over 60 years of practical application and the lack of evidence to the contrary, there is nothing to indicate that when coupled with appropriate well construction, the practice of hydraulic fracking in deep formations in areas groundwater, there is a lack of demonstrating evidence that hydraulic fracking conducted in many shallow formations presents a substantial risk of endangerment to groundwater. And by the end of this year, 2014, the Environmental Protection Agency of the US intends to publish a comment, their report entitled "The Study of the Potential Impact of Hydraulic Fracturing on Drinking Water Resources."
We're going to have to leave it there. And now to our final speaker for the motion, fracking threatens our water resources. We have Mariette Liefren, chairperson of the Federation for Sustainable Environment, which is a prominent environmental activist group within the mining sector.
I do not have profundity in the fracking, but my experiences in the gold mining industry and its long-term impacts upon groundwater. I shall therefore, by analogous reasoning, adduce evidence to suggest that it is highly plausible, because of weaknesses and failures in our current regulatory regime and framework, that the profound and irreversible impacts of gold mining on our groundwater ecology may be perpetuated in the case of fracking. Unless the regulatory regime is optimized to establish proactive management and mitigation measures, to implement the precautionary principle or risk-averse principle if there are uncertainties or gaps of information, to implement and enforce the polluter pays principle, also the retrospective application of the polluter pays principle, to quantify non-current or residual or latent impacts which may manifest hundreds of years after fracking has stopped, to internalize externalities and not to externalize it on future generations, a mute environment or communities, to enforce environmental legislations and the terms and conditions of water use license and environmental management program reports, to implement cooperative governments on a vertical and a horizontal level, to ensure that there are sufficient rehabilitation funds to address the lifetime of the impacts that may continue for hundreds of years, and to ensure that there are sustainable land uses with associated resources, water, after fracking. Unless these failures and weaknesses are not addressed, we shall perpetuate the long-term and adverse impacts on groundwater and the ecology as we have witnessed in the gold mining industry.
Thank you, Mariette. And now the final statement against the motion will be made by Kulani Kingston, a partner in the oil and gas sector group of Weber Wenzel Attorneys.
Thank you, Sabrina, and good morning to the listeners. Shale gas presents an incredible opportunity with tremendous economic benefits for all. In the context of the shale gas reserves in Peru, which are estimated at 390 TCFs, there are 2 points that I'd like to make. The first is that in terms of energy security, it is estimated that the reserves that are available in Peru would meet our energy requirements for the next 310 years. That is significant. Secondly, in the context of job creation, they would create at least 850,000 jobs, according to a report by Econometrics. The second point I'd like to make is that as responsible citizens in this country, we need to really move away from emotion and alarmist statements that ultimately detract from our ability to focus on the risks in a sober-minded manner and to ensure that those risks are appropriately mitigated. It is incumbent on all of us to do this in order that we end up at a place that is the correct conclusion. To my mind, the fundamental issue here lies in the government creating a regulatory framework that ensures the success of fracking in the Karoo, which is done in a sustainable and responsible manner. The issue here for me as well is that monitoring shale gas fracking is ultimately what is important and should be what we are focusing on at all times.
That's where we are going to leave it. We've heard from all the debaters here this morning, and the motion this morning is fracking threatens our water resources. And of course, then the next round, we'll be opening it up to the audience as well as our listeners at home. 0891-104-208 is the number to dial. And of course, it is a contest. It is not just a debate for debate's sake. So if you have been swayed already by either side of the debates this morning, SMS us on 34701. The keyword frack. You can either vote yes or no, for or against the motion, and then of course you can tweet AM Live on SAfm. The hashtag is decisive debate. And just taking a quick look at the voting coming through on the SMS line. At the moment, the no's are on 57% and the yeses are 43%. So do stay with us and keep voting.
South Africa, meet South Africa. Meet 50 million reasons to say hello. Eta, meet Housed. Salam, meet Mono. When we gather around as one, we know to take and pass along. We say sorry when we've done nothing wrong. Meet a people united by song. A future full of dreams and imaginations bursting at their seams. One day, meet a nation that loves to play. Saki Saki, meet Pansula, meet the original trance, meet Curiosity, 14A, meet 14B, meet Sunshine with Africa's favorite airline. There's a story in each seat because great things happen every time we meet. South Africa, meet South African Airways. We are ready to connect you. South African Airways, bringing the world to Africa, taking Africa to the world.
A saxophone, just an ordinary instrument, and in the hands of a master, it can do the extraordinary. It can pick up on the mood of the musician and the mood of the audience to create something so unique it can only be called jazz. Move the music your way at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz, 25 to 27 September, Santon Convention Center. Book a cotton ticket. Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Joy of Standard Bank. Moving forward.
AM Live on SAfm 104 to 107.
Thank you for tuning in to AM Live this morning. It is 2 minutes before 8. And if you've just joined us, we are debating the motion, fracking threatens our water resources. And in the next round, of course, we will be opening it up. And if you've missed it, you have missed out on quite a bit. Some really compelling arguments being put forth by our debaters here this morning. And of course, we need you to vote because this is important. It is not just a discussion. It is indeed a contest. So please keep those votes coming in. 34701, the keyword is frack. Yes for the motion and no against the motion. And of course, our SAfm Twitter account is also operated this morning, hashtag decisive debates. So that's what we are bringing you this morning. And just to remind you, the line, if you want to call in, our telephone line, 0891 104-208, that is the number to dial. And right now we are coming up to a news bulletin and stand by for Kirat Nala.
SAfm, South Africa's news and information leader.
Top stories at 8 o'clock. Prime Media apologizes over the ANC cartoon and strict measures to curb doping at the conference. Good morning. Prime Media has apologized to South Africans over the cartoon titled A Congress of Clowns. The cartoon shows clowns with red noses that can be seen to depict former State Security Minister Siyabonga Twele, newly appointed Water and Sanitation Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene, and Agriculture and Fisheries Deputy Minister Becky Cele. The cartoon also has voters watching on and describes them as the clowns who voted them in, and also uses an Afrikaans insult. The media house was forced to apologize for an outrage on the social network Twitter. I the protest said from the online publication.
Publishing a cartoon on our website, we are sorry that it has had such a negative impact on people in South Africa, because the people of South Africa don't deserve to be criticized in a blanket way. Politicians put this on bucket, and the commentary around politicians could be very warranted. But when it does come to the election, it is certainly, we do apologize for the comment on the election.
Meanwhile, the ANC will this morning picket at Prime Media offices in Johannesburg. ANC spokesperson Keith Forza says the cartoon has racial overtones and insulted those who voted for the ANC.
Prime Media, in a way, saying that people should have voted for the ANC. It is an anti-ANC stance that is projected every political thing that they are making, but to take their responsibility or to not touching them in politics. And the ANC will also raise this. It projects insult the public. It uses inappropriate language to describe voting for the ANC, but also how it projects into that.
Forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan, National Police Commissioner, and Crime Intelligence boss Chris Ndlovu will have a response issued by Pritchard yesterday. Pritchard and 5 co-accused on trial in the South Gauteng High Court, sitting at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court on Gauteng's East Rand. They're facing charges of dealing in drugs, attempted murder, and kidnapping. They've all pleaded not guilty. They say
court proceedings gave a full test. She could not proceed. Diego will also have to clarify whether she instructed officers to investigate China. One of his co-accused was Gerard, who told us to solve the records of tracking devices of crime in the streets of cars when they several areas. And O'Sullivan has to analyze 4 records leads to completion. Should I do SABC?
Nelson Mandela's granddaughter, Leeka Mandela, has expressed disappointment at what she calls or failing to stage play.
I have mentioned the customer extension to the South African Institute of Drug-Free Sport, just to show you are fully compliant from that point. All the facilities that they have. You have also briefed various staff and chaperones who will be working on chaperoning the airport.
Apologies for the sound of that soundbite. And Rector of the Free State University, Professor Jonathan Jansen, has received an honorary doctorate of letters, a degree from the University of Vermont in the United States. He was honored for the outstanding work he has done through various initiatives in Southern Africa and abroad. The University of Vermont highlighted the leadership of change program. The University of Vermont citation states that Janssen is a leading intellectual renowned for his passionate dedication to education, social justice, and the progress of reconciliation. Recapping the top story at 8, Prime Media has apologized to South Africans over the cartoon titled A Congress of Clowns. For SAfm News, I'm Kieran Lala, back with a recap of this morning's top stories at 8:30.
On SAfm. Excellency involved in this one. Anyways, back through the stage. Just mostly cleared up, so traffic slowly is area. And headcount, good news, the stationary truck obstruction on the N1 tower that closed the ramp to the N7 has been cleared, that the ramp has been reopened, the N should go all the way through to the Kubo interchange area. And a reminder of the tanker crash outside Kurman on the M14 in the Northern Cape petrol tanker involved in a collision with partly leaking petrol, may well be, which will arrive by the M14 closed with some local diversions. Rob Byrne, AMR.
On SAfm.
6 minutes past 8 here on AM Live. It is the forum at 8, but very different forum this morning because we are having a decisive debate, of course, brought to you in collaboration with WWF. And this morning, the motion that we are debating is fracking threatens our water resources. And of course, we've heard opening arguments, and it's now your opportunity to weigh in on this particular debate. 0891 104 208 is the number that you can dial. And of course, we have a studio, well, we're not in studio, but we have an audience here. So we'll also have roving mics in the audience. And please, if you can keep it short, sharp, and to the point. So we'll send the mics around, and if you could just identify yourself, and of course, if need be, tell us which organization you represent. So if there's anybody, you can just indicate to me where you are. But before we go to that, I just want to give the panel an opportunity for rebuttal. And I want to start with you.
Thank you. Mr. Naidu said that there's been a high price to pay in the United States, but that's not true. The science and the regulatory findings say otherwise. Pollution has been rare, and it's proved to be preventable. For example, in high rainfall areas, water use can be as low as 0.1% of available water. I cited statistics from a dry region in Texas, where it's 1.7%. Frankly, I'm a little puzzled to see the Water Research Commission, which is part of the Department of Water Affairs, at this table arguing for the motion that Shell gas threatens water resources. Just a couple of months ago, its Water Research Manager, Dr. Shafiq Adams, told the media, let the science speak, because he said the politics was jumping ahead of the science. Considering that research is currently ongoing into the cruise groundwater and exactly what the risks and resources are, I'm a bit surprised that Mr. Naidu not jumping ahead of the science yet.
And then, of course, Jonathan Deal, you wanted to respond?
Thank you, Sakina. I have some comments on certainly on Mr. Fechter's statements. Just to go to the very most recent one, quoting the Water Research Council, absolutely let the science speak. And I've quoted this morning, and I will quote this morning specifically from a report authored by the Canadian Council of Academies, written by 14 independent scientists, peer-reviewed 10 times, and which is a very significant body of work. And I agree with Mr. Fechter, absolutely let the science speak, which is something that has not happened yet in this country. But in Mr. Fechter's argument, he places much emphasis, Sakina, on water consumption instead of water pollution. And the water consumption is an issue, but it's not the only issue. And of course, he goes to what the industry commonly uses very frequently and conveniently for them is the golf course argument. They try to trivialize the water consumption by comparing it to how much water is used to water a golf course. The difference is that when water is used for fracking, Sakina, that water disappears out of the hydrological cycle permanently. It is polluted, it is injected deep underground, and it does not return to get used by agriculture or people again. So this golf course argument actually needs to be dispelled once and for all. Evidence of contamination, Mr. Fechter says, is occasional. I would disagree with him. The scientists disagree with him. And I'm going to quote a few short points here, if I have your interest on. 2010, Cabot Oil and Gas in Dimmock, Pennsylvania, paid 43.6 million rand to 19 families, 5.2 million rand to the Department of Environmental Protection in the same town or the same state, and had to install whole house mitigation systems. Chesapeake paid 16.6 million rand to 3 families a year or two later. One of the houses I've stood in and confirmed that it is empty. What we're dealing with here is a situation where oil and gas companies don't make payments like that. They don't buy homes from private people if there hasn't been contamination. This is just scratching the surface of it, but the fact that Mr. Vector can refer to isolated incidents is not true. Actually, they're not isolated. They are just isolated in their reporting because of the very determined efforts of the oil and gas industry to hide it.
Jonathan Deal, of course, arguing for the motion. Fracking threatens our water resources, and Ivo Vector arguing against that. And it is now time for us to go to the audience and get their comments, their suggestions, or whatever it is that they'd like to weigh in on. And I must just give you a quick update on the voting results. At the moment, the no's are still in the lead with 57%, and the yeses on 43%. And remember that SMS line 34701, the keyword is frack, and you can either vote yes or no for or against the motion. We're going to go to the audience now, and let's just start off with the gentleman sitting here in the front. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Jeffrey Barbie. I've worked as a journalist here, and I've been researching fracking for the last 2 years. The facts from the United States say that very clearly there's about 1 spill every 1,000. Very clear that it's very clear that Ivo Vector's points about there being no pollution from the fracking process leaves out all the pollution that occurs from the whole chain that starts from the day they drill the well to the day the gas is delivered there to people's houses. And I come from a place where we have about 1 pollution event every 3 days in Garfield County.
I certainly did not exclude that, and in fact I specifically said that although the fracking itself doesn't cause pollution, or has been documented to cause pollution,